camping. It's supposed to be a time for adventure, relaxation, and reconnecting with nature. But sometimes the deep woods hide something far more terrifying than a peaceful night under the stars. From unexplainable noises to terrifying encounters, these are 3 real camping trips that ended in pure horror. Our first story takes us deep into the heart of Appalachia, a place where ancient mountains pierce the sky, their peaks shrouded in mist and mystery. And shadows hold secrets as old as time, whispering tales of the unknown, a place where, legend has it, people go missing, vanishing without a trace, leaving behind only questions. This is where a group of friends, experienced hikers, planned a weekend camping trip, eager to explore the wilderness. They knew the trails, respected the wilderness, and were well prepared. Or so they thought, confident in their abilities. The first day went off without a hitch, filled with laughter and adventure. They set up their campsite near a secluded stream, the sound of rushing water a soothing melody that calmed their spirits. Laughter echoed through the trees as they shared stories and cooked dinner over an open fire, the warmth of the flames warding off the evening chill. Everything seemed normal, peaceful, serene, as if nothing could go wrong. But as the sun set, casting long shadows, a sense of unease settled over the campsite, an unspoken tension in the air. The air grew colder, the shadows deeper, and the silence of the woods became almost deafening, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Around midnight, one of the campers, James, woke up to what he thought were footsteps circling their tents, a sound that sent chills down his spine. He could hear the soft crunch of leaves, the snap of a twig, the rustling of something moving just beyond his tent, too close for comfort. Thinking it was an animal, he tried to ignore it, convincing himself it was nothing to worry about. But the footsteps continued, slow, deliberate, circling their campsite, each step amplifying his fear. Unable to shake the feeling of dread, James slowly unzipped his tent and peeked out into the darkness, his heart racing. The fire had died down to glowing embers, casting an eerie light into the surrounding woods, shadows dancing in the flickering glow. And that's when he saw them. 2 glowing eyes staring at him from the darkness, unblinking and menacing. They weren't the eyes of a deer or any animal he'd ever seen before, their gaze piercing through the night. They were too high off the ground, too close together, and seemed to burn with an unnatural intensity, unlike anything he had ever encountered. James froze, his heart pounding, unable to move or look away. The eyes remained fixed on him for what felt like an eternity, then vanished into the darkness, leaving him in a state of shock. James lay awake the rest of the night, every creak of a branch, every rustle of leaves sending shivers down his spine, unable to shake the feeling of being watched. The next morning, the campers awoke to a terrifying discovery, one that would haunt them forever. One of their own, David, was gone, vanished without a trace. His sleeping bag was still zipped inside the tent, but his backpack and shoes were missing, as if he had left in a hurry. It was as if he'd vanished into thin air, leaving no clues behind. Despite an extensive search by authorities, no trace of David was ever found, his disappearance remaining an unsolved mystery. Our next story takes us west, to the rugged wilderness of the Colorado Rockies, a place of breathtaking beauty, towering peaks and dense forests. It's also a place where isolation can be both a blessing and a curse, as a young couple, Sarah and Tom, were about to discover. They decided to camp in a remote part of the Rockies, far from any trails or other campers. They craved solitude, a chance to disconnect from the hustle and bustle of everyday life. They found the perfect spot, a secluded clearing beside a pristine alpine lake. They spent the day hiking, exploring the surrounding woods and fishing in the crystal-clear waters. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange, pink, and purple, they built a campfire and settled in for the night. They shared stories, laughter echoing through the trees. But as the fire died down and darkness enveloped their campsite, the silence of the woods took on a different tone. It was no longer peaceful but heavy, oppressive, filled with unseen eyes. That's when they heard it. a slow, rhythmic sound like something large was breathing just outside their tent. In, out, in, out. The sound was close, too close for comfort. Sarah and Tom froze, their blood turning to ice. Thinking it might be a bear, Tom slowly reached for the flashlight, his heart pounding. He unzipped the tent a fraction of an inch, just enough to peek outside. The beam of the flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating the trees just beyond their campsite. But there was no bear, no animal of any kind. Instead, standing motionless in the beam of the flashlight was a man. He was tall and thin, his clothes dirty and ragged. He stood facing their tent, his arms at his sides, his face hidden in the shadows. Tom called out, "Hello, can we help you?" But the figure didn't move. It just stood there, staring at them with an intensity that sent chills down their spines. Then the man slowly tilted his head back and let out a low, guttural laugh. It wasn't the laugh of a human being. Before Tom could react, the figure turned and melted into the darkness. Tom and Sarah huddled inside their tent, fear clinging to them like a shroud. They didn't sleep that night. As soon as dawn broke, they packed up and fled, their idyllic getaway transformed into a terrifying memory. They vowed never to return to that part of the Rockies again, haunted by the man in the woods. Chapter 3. Our final story takes us to the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest, where towering trees blot out the sun and the air hangs heavy with the scent of damp earth. The forest floor is a mosaic of moss and fallen leaves, creating a soft, almost silent path for those who dare to tread. It's a place steeped in Native American lore, where the line between reality and myth blurs. Legends speak of spirits and ancient beings that guard the forest, their presence felt in every rustle of leaves and every whisper of the wind. It's here, in a place known as the Whispering Woods, that our final story unfolds. A place where the trees seem to have eyes and the shadows move with a life of their own. Locals would tell you to avoid these woods. They speak of strange occurrences and eerie sounds that have no logical explanation. They'd say the trees whisper secrets to those who wander too close, secrets better left unheard. The whispers are said to be the voices of the forest spirits, warning or perhaps luring the unwary. They'd say the woods themselves are alive, watching, listening, waiting for the unwary. The very air seems to hum with an unseen energy, a presence that is both ancient and unsettling. But Jake, an avid outdoorsman, scoffed at such tales. He believed in the tangible, the real, and the forest was just another challenge to conquer. To him, they were nothing more than folklore, stories to scare children and keep the superstitious at bay. He longed for the solace of the wilderness, the peace and quiet that only nature could provide. So, ignoring the warnings, Jake packed his gear and headed deep into the Whispering Woods. He was determined to prove that the stories were just that, stories. He found a clearing, a small patch of open ground surrounded by towering trees. It seemed like the perfect spot to set up camp. He pitched his tent, built a small fire, and settled in for the night. The crackling of the firewood was a comforting sound in the otherwise silent forest. As he drifted off to sleep, he could have sworn he heard the faintest of whispers, but when he opened his eyes, there was nothing there. Just the darkness and the distant hoot of an owl. Around midnight, Jake woke with a start. His heart raced as he tried to pinpoint what had disturbed his sleep. A sound had pierced his sleep, a sound that sent shivers down his spine. It was unlike anything he had ever heard before. It was his own voice, calling his name. The sound was eerie, almost otherworldly. Jake? It was close, too close, right outside his tent. The voice seemed to echo in the stillness of the night. His heart pounded as he fumbled for his flashlight. His hands trembled as he tried to steady the beam of light. He had to be dreaming, he had to be. But the fear felt all too real. But the voice came again, closer this time, more insistent. "Jack!" The sound was almost hypnotic, drawing him towards the unknown. Terror gripped him. This was no dream. This was a nightmare come to life. Something was out there, something that knew his name, something that sounded like him, but twisted, distorted, wrong. The very essence of the voice was malevolent. He gripped his pocket knife, the cold steel a small comfort in the suffocating darkness. It was his only defense against the unknown. He lay frozen in his sleeping bag, every sense on high alert. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves. The whispers continued throughout the night, growing louder, more insistent, a chorus of voices whispering his name. Each whisper seemed to come from a different direction surrounding him. "Jack, come out and play! Jack! We're waiting! Jack!" The voices were playful yet sinister, like a dark invitation. Then, as suddenly as they'd started, the whispers stopped. The abrupt silence was almost as terrifying as the whispers had been. Silence descended once more, heavy, oppressive. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Jake lay awake until dawn, too terrified to move. Every minute felt like an eternity. As the first rays of light pierced the darkness, he finally unzipped his tent and stumbled out into the cold morning air. The forest looked different in the daylight, less menacing but still eerie. He scanned the woods around him, his eyes searching for any sign of what had tormented him. The forest was still, almost peaceful, and that's when he saw them. Footprints. His footprints. They were unmistakable, leading away from the campsite and into the heart of the whispering woods. The sight sent a chill down his spine. He packed up his gear with trembling hands and fled, never once looking back. The forest had shown him its true nature, and he wanted no part of it. To this day, Jake can't explain what happened that night. The memories haunt him, a constant reminder of the night he spent in the whispering woods. And there you have it, 3 terrifying camping trips that turned into nightmares. Stories that remind us that sometimes the greatest adventures come with the greatest risks. So the next time you find yourself out in the wilderness, remember these tales. Respect the power of nature, and never underestimate the darkness that can lurk just beyond the light of your campfire. Which one disturbed you the most? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. And if you're brave enough, maybe consider a camping trip of your own. Just